Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy summer. This evening on this Teletown Hall, I'd like to discuss some of the things I've been working on legislatively on your behalf, but probably more importantly, to answer your questions. Now, before we get started, note that you can press *3 to ask a question and *6 to subscribe to our newsletter. So it's *3 to ask a question and get in the queue. And I'm just going to chat for a couple moments here while people get in the queue. So recent events. Obviously, President Trump, his campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, is going to captivate Congress as soon as we come back in. And we're going to start with I'm on the Oversight Committee. I'm on four committees, the Oversight Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, Transportation, and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. We're going to have a hearing on July 22nd on the circumstances at the Butler rally. And look, we want to get answers on your behalf, obviously. We want to know ourselves too, but it's important that we all understand what happened there and what appears to me, and I think likely many of you, regardless of what you think of the candidate, as a complete failure. I mean, people went under the auspices of being safe. I mean, what safer place do you think you could be in? And then, of course, one man, a father, a husband, a volunteer firefighter, lost his life there, and there are other people that still remain in the hospital. And of course, Donald Trump was nearly assassinated, but for an inch or so. So that's going to captivate our attention as soon as we come back, unless something else happens between now and then, which is bigger than that. But we're going to be dealing with it either way. And then I did want to let you know I was recently appointed to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And so that is a position where the members of the committee get to see the things from the CIA and the FBI and so on and so forth that not all members get to see. And of course, we get to question the intelligence agencies on their decisions and their operations and so on and so forth. So I'm very honored to be appointed to that committee, and of course, I'll be asking questions on your behalf about the things that are important to you. Some recent legislation that you might be interested in. We just passed the House recently, a forced organ harvesting bill. We don't want people to be profiting or involved in China's forced organ harvesting program, and so we just got a bill passed in the House unanimously, by the way, to deal with that. And so then we also introduced the American LNG First Act, which it's about liquefied natural gas and the fact that America can do better about how we deal with that and how we transport that and the markets that we use so that the price can be lower to you. And so that's my interest in offering that legislation. The Disaster Deductible Act, as you probably realize, the federal government pays for a lot of disasters. Some might even occur in Pennsylvania on occasion. But we would like the states to have some skin in the game before the federal government gets involved, much like you do with your own insurance policies. And so that's what that's about. The No Propaganda Act, I don't know whether you realize this or not, but part of your taxes go to pay for the corporation for public broadcasting. And it's recently been revealed that they are not apolitical as they should be, but decidedly very political. And so that needs to be dealt with. We understand the value that they provide, but they shouldn't be playing for one team or the other. And then recently out of the House, we passed a couple bills, one in particular, the Use It Act. I don't know whether you know this or not, but a lot of federal properties across the country, we surveyed ones in D.C., Washington, D.C., are just generally unused. I think the Department of General Services, that's the department that actually deals with the leases to all the agencies. Their participation in their building was in single digits. I think it was 9%. So that means you're paying for a building, you're paying for the maintenance, but only 9% of the employees are showing up to work. And so essentially, we either want them to use the building or co-locate with another agency or sell the building. And so So that's kind of the recent occurrences, and we can talk about spending, the spending bills, votes, et cetera, anything that you would like to. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Q&A if there's anybody on the line. And again, if you want to ask a question, press *3. To ask a question, *6 to subscribe to our newsletter.
Okay, our first question is from Victor in Camp Hill.
Hey, Victor. Scott Perry, what can I do for you?
What are your thoughts on the Secret Service response to President Trump's assassination attempt?
Well, Victor, I don't want to get out ahead of myself before the facts are in, but I will tell you, I think even laypersons know that you can't leave the high ground with unrestricted line of sight, uh, un, just undealt with, if that's even a term, just not unaddressed, and the president, any president, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's Donald Trump, Barack Obama, any president is oftentimes under some threat, and so in circumstances like that, we just can't be too careful. And it seems like a very rookie mistake to me, but we need to know about manpower. We need to know about what decisions were being made. We need to know about what I call their rules of engagement, because we've heard things like, the counter sniper team has to request permission first. We also have heard that the counter sniper team has to wait for somebody to be fired upon. These things sound nonsensical to me, but I don't want to unduly. I don't want to get ahead of myself and speculate. So we just want these answers. And I will tell you, I will tell you this too, Victor. I think that it might require an independent commission to do this investigation. These, unfortunately, agencies oftentimes get into a CYA posture when it comes to answering questions, and we don't want to have to be dealing with that. We don't want to, we don't want to have to be getting subpoenas to get these folks to come in and talk to us. That they should understand the gravity of the situation, understanding that President Biden and former President Trump are both campaigning actively right now, and we can't wait months to get these answers. So that might be something that we look at too. I hope that answers your question. Okay. If we have another question, please.
We do. Next question is from Bob.
Okay, Bob.
Hi.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm listening to you, Bob.
All right. Okay. Question is, what can be done about Mayorkas not doing his job? I mean, this is sort of related to what you were just talking about, but to have these agencies call together their underlings to try to find out what went wrong. I mean, what about the fact that Trump was denied protection and so was RFK? And it doesn't make sense that someone like Mayorkas can be so dangerous actually for the things that he doesn't do.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
it is very it is very frustrating, Bob. As you know, the House impeached Secretary Mayorkas. We voted to impeach him. I voted in favor of that impeachment. Unfortunately, it will go to the Senate, where they would have to essentially put him on trial for the articles of impeachment. They're choosing not to do that. We have just a couple other remedies to the House of Representatives. Understand, we're a legislative body. We are not the executive branch, so we don't have law enforcement authority. We can't go out and arrest people. We can't we can't fire people. I think I'm sure that we had an opportunity to vote to reduce his salary. I'm sure if that was the case, I would have voted in favor of that. The other thing we can do is diminish as the House of Representatives, the appropriation or the amount of money that we send to the agency that the secretary is in charge of, to try and get their attention and say, we don't want you to do what you're doing. We want you to do other things. We want you to have other priorities. Now, I can tell you, unfortunately, that last thing that failed in the House of Representatives, and we actually gave the Department of Homeland Security more money while we have a wide open, quite honestly, both southern and northern border at this point with all the associated things, the fentanyl, 100,000 people a year. Just think about that. 100,000 people, Americans die a year. That's more than we lost in all the years of Vietnam. The human trafficking and the people on the terror watch list, you name it. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, and this is not going to be very enticing to you, Bob, but this is the consequence of elections, and this guy is there because the president wants him to be there, and we're kind of at the limit of things we can do, much that we disagree with his performance or find it very, very lacking. So I share your frustration, but each body has limitations, and we don't want anybody to supersede their limitation, not the legislative branch, the executive branch, or the judicial branch. And I think we have done, at least in the House, all we can. The Senate doesn't want to deal with his impeachment, though. So, okay, I hope that answers your question, Bob. We're looking for the next question.
We're going to do a quick poll question.
Oh, there's a poll question. Okay. Since January of 2021, America has experienced a 20% increase in inflation, or the cost of living, meaning it costs the average family an additional $1,000 more in expenditures every month. Are you and your family finding it harder to pay for basic necessities? Yes or no? And how do they vote?
Press 1 for yes.
Oh, press 1 for yes. And how about no?
2.
2. Oh, I want to be sure. And of course, press *3 if you have a question. So that's the poll question. And I don't know how you're going to answer that, but I do a lot of grocery shopping for my family. Of course, I buy gasoline in my car. I'm generally out in the community, in the same places you are when I'm not in Washington, D.C. And person after person has told me everything from building materials to food, to daycare, to electricity prices are kind of beyond their reach in some way right now. Okay. Next question, please.
Okay, we have Joseph from Dillsburg.
All right, Joseph, what's on your mind?
I understand you guys have passed the SAVE Act to try
Yes.
to make it easier to prevent election fraud. In the event that legislation is vetoed or failed or does not happen, what plans do the Republican Party have to try to either prevent ballot harvesting or, what's the strategy if that legislation fails, I guess?
Yeah, well, we did pass the SAVE Act, and I voted in favor of it. And just to be clear for everybody, it's already illegal for someone that's not a citizen to register to vote in a federal election. It's already illegal for them to vote in a federal election. But right now, we use the honor system to determine whether someone is legal or not, and we really don't. States don't really check on that. Joseph, I got to tell you that if you read your Constitution, it says that states will determine the time and manner of elections, and so we give states broad latitude to do that. And some allow ballot harvesting, some don't. Some allow drop boxes, some do not. You name it. And look, I have my opinions on those things. I was not a fan of what we passed in Pennsylvania a few years back. That was Act, I think, 77, which is allowed for wide scale mail-in voting for 50 days and drop boxes. I will tell you, I think that most people have a drop box right at the end of their driveway or at their doorstep, and it's called your mailbox. And I don't feel comfortable with drop boxes, even those with cameras on them, because I don't know of one judge that will reject a drop box that has, you name it, an untold number of ballots put into it. Only one person can only vote one time. So you only get one ballot. You're not supposed to be putting in 10, 22, only one, right? So, but I don't know of a judge that would reject any after the fact, because you can't tell which one was the legitimate ballot and which one was not the legitimate ballot. So I think that the way that we're going to see some change here is going to have to come from the individual states, and quite honestly, I think it's going to have to be more competitive on both sides. I think that our colleagues on the Democrat side have become very well versed in the new voting systems. The Republican Party has not, and or at least to date hasn't, and that will probably drive the conversation once they become more adept at it. That's probably a lacking answer for you, but here again, we want to honor the limitations that Congress has, and when the Constitution says the states will determine the time and manner of elections, we need to honor that. So, all right. I've got another question here. I guess this one is on. Oh no, Byron. Hold on. Oh, Brian from Boiling Springs.
Yeah, hi, Representative Perry.
Hey, sir. How are you?
Yeah,
What's on your mind?
Hey, Representative Perry. Hey, thanks, first of all, for your time here to just reach out to your constituents. My question to you, real quick, was on the Corporate Transparency Act. So, in light of the earlier this year, the federal district court in Alabama's decision to rule that act unconstitutional, is it in the power of Congress to review that act and reverse it, or is this going to be something that we're going to have to fight each state in the federal district court?
Yeah, I think in the meantime, yeah, it is within Congress's power to write the law differently if they so choose to. Of course, that will be subject to review of the courts in the individual states and any plaintiffs, but it is within the Congress's power. When I say Congress, just keep in mind the House and the Senate together, because you can't just move it through one body. You got to get it through both. But certainly the authority exists to do that, and they might look at how the court decided and determine a better way or a different way to make it comport with the Constitution. Understand, every piece of legislation that I look at has a statement of constitutionality included with it, so that the maker of the bill, the author of the bill, has to state under which chapter and what section of the Constitution it applies and how it is constitutional. Now, but also understand that's in the opinion of the person that wrote the bill. And sometimes the courts and other individuals see it differently, as in this case. And so, there'll be some things to me that look blatantly unconstitutional, regardless of that statement, and some things I'm not, necessarily sure of. But I just want to let you know that statement goes with every bill, but it also is subject to the opinion of the courts and the opinion of the people voting for or against it. So yeah, we do have the authority to revisit that. I don't know that we will, but the authority certainly exists. All right, we're looking for Larry from Mechanicsburg. Are you there, Larry? Hello, Larry. You're up if you're connected. I don't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Yeah, Larry, I
okay.
got you. What's on your mind, sir?
This last election, a woman, an election official from Philadelphia, she said we have 2 million mail-in ballots to open and tabulate. This was Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Friday at noon, they said they were done. You know how long it takes for people to open 2 million envelopes and tabulate them? It's impossible unless you got a couple thousand people working on it 24/7. So it's either subterfuge or something's totally haywire with our election process. I like the Islamic where you show up, you dip your thumb, and that proves that you voted, and you only get to vote once. I don't know why we can't have the same thing. If people need help, we can get volunteers to transport them to, and dip their thumb. There's just too much cheating, I'll call it. So I'm sorry.
Well, Larry, you don't have to apologize. There's a lot of people that share your frustration, which is exactly why I called for an election or for an investigation after the 2020 election, because to me, on behalf of my constituents, the literally thousands of phone calls, emails, text, letters, you name it, asking about things that we knew happened, let alone anything that you might have speculated on. We knew that some counties cured ballots, other counties didn't cure ballots. Some ballots had signatures, others did not. Some ballots were counted before the election, some were counted after the election. And that's called disparate treatment, where the equality clause in the Constitution says we all should be treated equally. There's not some protected class in this regard. And so I called for an investigation and was roundly criticized for that. But I will tell you, Larry, I'm a big fan of voting in person. And if there's a chance that I can't, because I'm traveling, I'm in Washington, D.C., which often happens on the primary day in Pennsylvania, I simply, over the course of my adult life, have requested a absentee ballot. The difference there is that I'm making the request. It's a proactive thing that I have to do if I want to vote, and I'm not going to be there, which is very different than literally thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, I don't know, of ballots being sent out or ballot applications being sent out from government agencies or maybe from private firms or concerns. And that just leads to, I think, a lot of confusion. So I would like to see this tightened up. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of elections have to be very tight on the front end, because after the fact, there's essentially very little, there's almost no remedy, right? You can complain all you want. You can provide evidence all you want. But like I said, there are a few judges, maybe none, that will throw out any ballots for the sake of the ones that might be legitimate. And so, since you can't separate the two, that's how it is. So, yeah, I'm very concerned about it. I'm on the Election Integrity Caucus in Congress, and again, we're going to do what we can at the federal level with things like the SAVE Act, which requires the states to prove citizenship before they allow people to vote in federal elections. But that's kind of the limit of what we can do, and then it's up to the states. Okay, dial *3 if you want to ask a question. Jeffrey in Shiremanstown, are you on? Jeffrey,
Hello.
what can I do for you? Yes, sir.
Hi, Scott. Hi.
Hey,
I'm
sir.
waiting for you, so you know.
Well, thank you.
No, my question is this. Now Biden, in his speech, he said it's time to put a bullseye on Trump. Well, now if that isn't inflammatory, I don't know what would be. Now they prosecuted or tried to prosecute President Trump. I don't know what the status of that is. Or, saying to the folks that were going to January 6th to go, be peaceful, And by everything that I've seen, they were.
Well, Jeffrey, let me just address, the bullseye
Sure.
comment. I'm sure it's a term of art, so to speak. But I think we do have to be somewhat mindful of the things that we say. People oftentimes use, in the crosshairs, which there's very few things that are, that someone is in the crosshairs for, unless it's in a rifle scope. That having been said, there are other things that have concerned me greatly. In the last Trump presidency, there was a comedian that held up what appeared to be a mock severed head of the president, and then there was some play where they characterized assassinating the president, and then a very popular actor said, "When's the last time an actor assassinated a president?" Look, I get that we don't all love who the president is. We probably disagree on different policies or maybe styles. This is America, and we should be able to disagree on those things without making it personal, so to speak, and certainly not kind of fomenting the violence in a rhetoric. So, look, we all fall short. I do too. I fall short of the grace of God. So we've all made mistakes, I'm sure. And the best thing to do is just kind of recognize that when that's happened and try and do better. And I think it's great that the president has called for, kind of an opportunity for unity here. He said, and I don't know what his original speech at the convention, which is being which is kicking off today. I don't know what was in his original speech, but he said after the events on Saturday that he was going to change the some of the content of his speech, and I think the indication is to reflect more of a posture of unity, which I think is good. Look, we all know that that in the current discourse today, we probably had some difficulty maintaining relationships with some of our neighbors, some of our friends, maybe even some family members, and it shouldn't really have to come to that. So I just hope we can all be mindful. I know it's difficult because passions are high and so on and so forth, but we certainly don't want the result that we saw on Saturday. And like I said, let's keep in mind that there's one man that's not going to go home to a man who under the guise of absolute safety and then protecting his wife and his children right there next to him had lost his life. His wife going home a widow. His children are going home without their father, and two other people I think are fighting for their life in a hospital. That's beyond, obviously, that's beyond outrageous and unacceptable. So I definitely hear what you're saying, Jeffrey. All right, Matt in Harrisburg, are you there?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi there.
got you
Can you hear
loud and
me?
clear, Matt. Yeah, what's on your mind, sir?
I'll keep it brief. Thanks for your
Yeah.
time. I appreciate your service as well. Wanted to say just my own understanding. I didn't vote for you. You're not really my political alignment, but I'm always curious. Why do you do what you
Yeah.
do? And more specifically, why did you decide to become a legislator?
Why? Just to clarify, why do I do what I do, and why did I decide to become a legislator? I just want to make sure I'm going to answer your question correctly.
Yeah, more the second question.
Yeah.
I was asked to clarify. I'm always curious to know why you do what you do. What drives you to do what you do? Why is that the direction you think you can put your best energy? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
That's all.
I will tell you, Matt, I never, ever in my life envisioned being a legislator. I never had a plan to be a legislator. Quite honestly, I literally thought that people like me just could not do jobs like that because I didn't know the people that were involved in it. I didn't have access to a lot of money. It looks like it cost a lot of money to run for your office. I just, people that work on cars and trucks and, when I first ran, I was running a mechanical contracting business. So water and sewer stuff, people that do that, I just had the impression, didn't run for office. But I had an opinion. I got involved with some of the folks that I thought were doing a decent job in trying to help them get elected because what I saw was it looked like things were headed in the wrong direction, both at the state and federal level. And I just kind of decided, well, as I was hanging around those people, I thought, well, they don't have any better ideas than I do, and I don't think they're any brighter than I am. Like I said, I fall short of the grace of God every day, but I just thought, well, I think I could do the same job and offer some things that are a different perspective that I don't really hear. And so, like I said, I just kind of decided to run to see, if that would happen. And I did. I did win. And even with Congress, Matt, I'd never had any plans to run for Congress, but my representative announced his retirement unexpectedly, and I thought, well, I see what's going on in the country. I think I've got something to offer, and the people will decide whether I do. And so, I threw my hat in the ring, and so that's how I ended up here. And look, Matt, I do it because uh, I love our country. I love what it stands for, and I worry that it's going in the wrong direction in so many ways. I worry about the limits of power at the federal level. We're supposed to have a government at the federal level where the citizens are sovereign and preeminent, and we don't answer to agencies and bureaucrats, or quite honestly, our elected officials. They answer to us. And so my wife and I have two wonderful children. We're concerned about their future. I've got a mother who is dependent on Social Security and Medicare. And at the trajectory we're on, those things are in jeopardy. I'm concerned for her, but I'm concerned about all the constituents I have that are in the same boat, whether you have kids, whether you don't, whether you're elderly, whether you're not. We want a country that we can count on and be proud of. And that's why I ran, and that's why I'm here. All right. Thank you, Matt. Matt in Lewisberry, are you on the line? Matt, this is Scott. If you can hear me, just go ahead and ask your question. Hello, Matt. Maybe Matt's not there anymore. I can kind of hear somebody on the other end. Maybe Matt walked away from the phone for a minute. Matt, if you're there, got to give you just a moment and then go on from there. Okay, poll question here. Okay, here's another poll question. Under President Biden's administration, ICE has deported 63% fewer illegal foreign nationals with prior criminal convictions. Do you feel safer in President Biden's America? Yes, I suppose you press 1. And no, I think you probably press 2. So that's another poll question. Press *3 to ask a question. Last call for Matt from Lewisberry. Okay, next question. Matt's not there. Okay, Kendra from Enola.
Hi,
Hey, Kendra, are you there?
Yes.
Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
Representative Scott.
What's on your mind,
Hello?
ma'am? Yes, I'm listening to
So
you, Kendra.
thank you for your time and for taking our questions. And I was just wondering, in light of the recent events that has happened to former President Trump, what will happen with the gun laws in Pennsylvania moving forward?
Well, I hate to say this. I don't want to be passing the bucks. I don't know what Pennsylvania will do in light of this. I'm not in the Pennsylvania legislature. They might take some action. They might not. I'm not sure what action. And look, I will tell you, Kendra. Like I said, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to assume or not assume that the firearm was purchased legally and owned legally. I don't want to assume any of those things. So I think probably, at least in this instance, it's important to get all the information before we make any judgments on what could have been done to stop that. I'm obviously sensitive to everybody's safety. I'm also very sensitive to our constitutional protections and what happens when those constitutional protections are eroded over time, even in the slightest way. As you probably know, Kendra, I take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I take that very, very seriously, and I try to leave my personal viewpoints out of it. I don't pick and choose what parts I love and which parts I don't love. When you take an oath, you take an oath, and I think it's important, whether that's in your marriage or whether it's the oath of office. So I don't know what the Pennsylvania legislature is going to do, but I'm certainly, I live in Pennsylvania. I'll be interested to see, just like you will, and maybe it's an opportunity to just reach out to your state representative and state senator to see if there's something there that they are working on or have in mind. Thanks for the call, Kendra. I'm going to Ashley in York City. Ashley,
Hi,
are you there?
Representative.
Hey, yes,
Yeah, I'm
ma'am.
here.
What
Can
can
you
I
hear
do
me?
for you? Yes, got you loud and clear.
Hi. So I see your ads a lot, and I appreciate you starting the conversation talking about how expensive necessities have been getting in Pennsylvania and I mean all over the country. And I see it in my own community. People who I talk to, it's hard for them to afford groceries. I've known people who have lost housing because of how high the rent costs are here. And whenever I see those ads, I can't help but think about how Pennsylvania sends $135,979,834 to Israel for weapons.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we send them money to give them free healthcare, free education, and free housing. And in addition to that, I just saw that you accept over $2 million from the Israel lobby, and I'm wondering why you care about Israel more than you care about Pennsylvanians.
Well, actually, I don't care about Israel more than I care about Pennsylvania or America by a long shot. And I do need to take some exception about the figure that $2 million. I don't know where that came from, but I can guarantee you that's that's not close to correct. That having been said, I know that Israel is our number one ally in the region. It is the only true democratically run country in the region, a region that is important to us and a region that is fraught with turmoil. I've had questions about the level of funding and how much we spend, but I will tell you this, and I think this is important for you to know. I'm not going to abandon the Jewish state. I never will. And I think that we need to help those who are allied with the United States of America, and Israel is under attack. And that having been said, the last spending bill, which included funding for Israel, also included funding for the terrorist organization of Hamas, which I found particularly egregious. And I'm just not going to vote for funding for Hamas, even if it includes other funding for Israel. Fine and happy to have the discussion over Israel itself and the existential threat to what happens when there is no, if there is no Israel. Of course, I'm old enough to remember plenty of reading and education on the Holocaust. And I am concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism in our country and around the world. I don't appreciate it, and I think that we need to make sure that that doesn't get out of hand or out of control, such that it did in the 30s overseas. And so I think it's important to stand up and say what you're for. I get your position that you feel like that I care for Israel more than the United States of America or Pennsylvania. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I would say this too, Ashley, and I've got 750,000 bosses, and I know I signed up for the job, so this is not a complaint, but it's, you try and take in all the viewpoints of everybody in the district and make the best decision you can on behalf of everybody in the district. And that means that sooner or later, somewhere along the line, somebody is not going to be happy with your decision. But what I do also is respect your opinion, make sure that I'm hearing your opinion, and then explaining myself and my votes. So I hope that answers your question. I'm looking for Stephen in York. Stephen, what's on your mind?
Yes, sir.
Stephen,
How
are
you,
you there?
Scott?
I'm well, sir. What can I do for you?
Hey, buddy. I voted for you last time. You're a good dude. You got the best of heart. But what's that Chevron case overturned by the Supreme Court have to do with Pennsylvania?
Well, this is the Chevron case, and it's not just Pennsylvania, Stephen. It's literally, well, it's every state and every citizen. So what Chevron, we called it Chevron deference, and essentially what was determined some time ago by the courts is that agencies were the experts, and if the agency, just pick any agency that you know of at the federal level, like whether the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the CDC, you name any agency. Whatever they determined, if there was a dispute, Chevron deference said, well, they have the experts. And so if there's essentially a dispute in court, we're going to side with them because of the deference of their expertise. The Supreme Court said, well, hold on a second here. That's not how this is supposed to go, because what was happening is then the agencies were doing rulemaking, and understand writing rules at agencies has the same authority as making a law in Congress. But in Congress, where you can vote to hold your elected official accountable, you have almost no way of doing that in the various numerous agencies, and they can promote. I'll just give you an example. There was some time where one of the agencies was promoting essentially all but banning gas stoves. Now, they'll say it wasn't a ban because 10% of the current gas stoves would qualify. But when you're making 90% of something unattainable, that's effectively a ban. And of course, citizens had no recourse in that. Now, I think that politically it became something that the administration didn't want to continue with, which is why it ended. But there's no doubt that under the decision of Chevron or Chevron deference, it's likely that because the agency's position would have been viewed by the courts as stronger than the people's position, that rule would have been upheld. And I, for one, don't agree with that rule making. I want to have a choice on whether I buy a gas stove or not and which one I buy. And I don't need the federal government telling me which one it is or whether I can do it or not. So Chevron has wide sweeping consequences for every person in the country, regardless of what state you're in, because we're all bound by federal rules made by federal agencies. So that, I hope, answers your question, Stephen. Okay, Renee in Harrisburg, are you there? What's on your mind?
Hi, yes, Congressman. Hi, yes,
Yes,
Congressman
ma'am.
Perry, I'm here. Thank you so much for voting for requiring people to show identification to vote, and that illegals are not allowed to vote in our elections. My next question is, or my actual question is, with regards to our borders. Doesn't Congress have more power than this executive order of the president to shut them down?
Well, Renee, it's been a frustration of mine and many of my colleagues. We essentially we have the power to fund or not to fund, and we have the power in impeachment to hold people accountable. But beyond that, our power is limited. The executive branch is the enforcement arm of the federal government, so it's the one that enforces the laws or doesn't enforce the laws. In my opinion, on this occasion, on this subject, the administration has chosen not to enforce the laws. And I think a strong argument can be made that they're literally flouting the law. So they're working against the law actively, which is a whole other it's one thing to just be delinquent and not enforce the law, but it's another to subvert the law, which I think is what's happening when you consider that people that are here that are coming illegally are being flown in from other countries, when people that are coming illegally are using and encouraged to use the CBP, Customs and Border Protection One app, to determine where to go to be welcomed by Border Patrol. Border Patrol is not there as the welcoming mat, but they're there to protect our country from people that are coming in unlawfully. We have lawful ports of entry, and Renee, you probably know this already, but I think it bears repeating. The United States of America lets in more people legally than any other country on the planet every single year. And no, that's not to say that there aren't problems with our legal immigration system, because there are problems and there are inequities that need to be solved. But to me, that's no reason to have what we have right now, which is essentially chaos, which makes communities unsafe, allows fentanyl to pour into our countries, allows gang activity to be promulgated or to continue unabated in our country. All that is completely avoidable. Unfortunately, our only real recourse is the impeachment of either the president or the secretary. We've done our part in the House on the secretary, or funding. Now, I would say to you that we have not done what we can do on funding. I voted to give them less and to try and target, if you're going to get this money, you have to spend it on keeping people out of the country from coming illegally. But that bill, that language didn't pass, and so other language passed. And of course, that's a function of the entire Congress. It's not just my voice that is heard, but it's all 435 plus 100 members in the Senate. So that's why it's somewhat difficult to get things, passed in Congress. But there's a reason for that. So I am, Renee, I'm duly frustrated, just like you are. And that's why I think that we need to have a very large course correction at the enforcement portion of government at the federal level, which is the executive branch. And that's what I'm advocating for as soon as possible. All right, Jeffrey in Mechanicsburg, what's on your mind, sir?
Hi, Congressman Perry. Thank you much for taking our questions here tonight. My question is
Yes,
in
sir.
regard to more detail in regard to PBS. I used to be a supporter of PBS. I've noted the very sharp left turn. It's become a propaganda machine for the left wing and the Democrats. This legislation, if you could give us a little bit more detail on that. And also, I have the question of, is that going to come up while Biden is president? And should he veto that, will you again bring it up, hopefully, once Trump becomes president?
Well, Jeffrey, it is something that I have brought up in numerous sessions because whether it gets publicity or not, the internal information that we get in briefings as members of Congress points to a one-sided media agency paid for by the taxpayers. And probably like you, my children watched a certain of public television because, we think it provided a value at the time. But at the same time, when your tax dollars are involved, we think that it needs to be, nonpartisan, in the middle, not playing for one team or the other. So my legislation, as long as they're going to, pick a side, it would defund the corporation for public broadcasting, and as long as they're willing to, play for one side as opposed to being a neutral arbiter, I just don't think that I can honestly expect my bosses, my constituents to have to pay for that. I will tell you, I don't know whether it's going to be scheduled for a vote in the House this session, but I can almost assure you, I can't read the future, but I doubt that bill would ever come up under the current leadership in the Senate. So I don't have high hopes for that, but I do think it's important for me to signal to my bosses the right expenditure of their money, and quite honestly, to get the attention of the corporation for public broadcasting, that if they're going to continue down the same course, that sooner or later there may be consequences. I can't speak to the future, but what we'd hope they do is at least course correct and have unbiased reporting. So that's the reason for it. And if they're going to continue down the same track, Jeffrey, I'm sure that I'm going to try and remedy that in the future as well. But I thank you for the question. Looking for Jude in Carlisle. Jude, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for taking my question.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to know what you've done and what you are planning on doing about gun control in the federal government. I know there was
in the
a
what?
question.
I'm sorry.
In the federal government.
Oh, in the federal government.
Federal government.
Well, I will tell you, like I said, I'm a strong supporter of the Constitution. I don't know that there's anything that we haven't currently done that would change the circumstances without taking and abridging citizens' rights. I know it's an important issue. It is a vexing issue. But I'm not sure that at the federal level that there's anything I've currently seen that's offered. I mean, you can talk about, for instance, I know there are offerings of so-called red flag laws. My concern with red flag laws is that you remove people's constitutional rights without any due process. And again, I take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and I'm not going to vote in favor of taking anyone's constitutional rights away without due process. And so, I don't think that is the answer. I think that we need to respect, obviously, the use of firearms. But I will tell you this: I think strict enforcement of the laws that we have on the books now would make a difference. For instance, I don't know whether you knew this or not, Jude, but and I don't know how they're doing lately. I should probably check. But there was a time that Pennsylvania was included in the many states that refused to report on people that were denied access to firearms because of mental deficiencies and maybe infractions with the law. They didn't report that. Well, if they don't report that, the National InstaCheck system can't work appropriately once that person's name and background is entered into it for the purchase of a firearm. And so what we were finding was many people that were barred from having a firearm because of their own behavior were getting firearms. Now, the answer, I think, at the time was to kind of, for lack of a better phrase, bribe the states to to do what was required under the law. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think that's a good expenditure of money. I think that the states should want to do that to keep their citizens safe and to make sure that people that have already shown um, some kind of irresponsibility towards firearms to not be able to purchase a firearm. But that all has to be adjudicated correctly so that the person received their constitutional due process. And so I am reluctant to take away. Well, I'm not going to take away people's rights or their due process rights, their constitutional rights, even if at the time it's emotionally charged and you're outraged by what you see. And I certainly have been outraged, whether it's the record crime in Chicago, even in Philadelphia, certainly Washington, D.C., or what happened in Butler County on Saturday. Jude, thank you for the question. Don in Dillsburg. Don, Scott, what's on your mind?
Hi, Scott. We're neighbors. I live in the same township as you.
Oh, great.
My question is, why do we got to pay for the world? I mean, we give billions of dollars to foreign aid to all these other companies, illegal aliens, or all that. Anybody comes across the border, supposedly from what I read, they get a expenditure card, bus to wherever they want to go, a place to live, a phone. Why do we have to pay for that? We got our own problems. Why don't we just take care of us first?
Well,
not everybody.
I agree with you about that, Don. And of course, I don't find any favor and don't agree with people that are here illegally receiving all the benefits and making it imperiling them for the citizens who have earned them and who have paid for them. Unfortunately, I can't control the administration. I have voted on numerous occasions to limit federal funding to different countries that are not acting in accordance to the best wishes of the United States of America. I do understand that the might of America can kind of get other countries to help us in certain ways or to be friends of America, and we can use the leverage that we have to do that. But I also know that we waste an awful lot of money on countries that generally don't see us as allies, and I don't see them turning around anytime soon. And of course, quite honestly, to me, the icing on the cake for that, or the prime example, is this last funding bill that literally spent money for Hamas. We don't want to see anybody suffer, but the United States has designated a Hamas a terrorist organization, and I just can't imagine how a representative can go to their constituents and advocate and justify a vote for an organization that your own government has determined to be a terrorist organization who attacked innocent people without cause, and we're giving them billions of dollars. So, Don, it is a vexing question, but I do want to let you know that on what we call the foreign and state operations appropriation is just a fancy way of saying how we spend your money. I'm constantly in the conversation on these different programs, driving the cost down. I have amendments on those type of things, forcing members to have to vote on those amendments to save us money, because we don't have to pay people to hate us. They'll probably hate us for free, some of them. So thank you, Don. Unfortunately, I guess this is the last question for the evening. Vicki in Harrisburg. Vicki, what's on your mind?
Hi. I agree with you,
Yes.
everything you've said tonight. First of all, my question is how aware people are, specifically in the government. There are very few businesses who offer retirement to surviving spouses. And the ones that do seem to always cut it by 25 to 35%, which makes it even harder. I, for one, mine is 65% of what my husband was making. And taxes, after you're 65 and 75 or 85, they just become so much harder, such as property taxes and school taxes. And seniors are really struggling. And I just want to know, I have found myself with extra time on my hands now, and I want to get involved to try and do something to help allay some of these taxes that the seniors are incurring. If you could point me in a direction where I could do some help or benefit, I would appreciate it.
Well, sure, Vicky. I would just encourage you to contact the office. Let them know what kind of volunteer things you want to get involved in. There's a host of different, whether they're charitable organizations, faith-based organizations, you name it. There's a myriad places. It just depends on what you feel best suits you. I'll tell you, one of the things that really kind of upsets me, especially for our seniors. First of all, like you said, I mean, they're counting on what they've saved all their lives, and for instance, this isn't a federal thing, but the state property tax I find particularly egregious. You can work your whole life and own your home, but then if you can't afford the increasing school taxes, you get kicked out of your home. That's, to me, patently un-American. And the other thing is that I think, unfortunately, seniors that do find some time on their hands, they've retired, they're receiving Social Security, and they say, well, I'm in good health, maybe I'll go, I got these rising electricity prices and fuel prices and food prices, I'll go get, a part-time job. And then they get penalized for trying to do better for themselves and trying to make ends meet. It seems to me that that's completely wrongheaded. And as all of our people, seniors in particular, face difficult circumstances of trying to make ends meet, we ought to be trying to make it easier for them. I mean, we can't, obviously, there are certain things we can't do. Private businesses are private businesses. We don't want to make them, price fixing or things like that. But where we can make it more efficient for them so that they can charge less. And I'm talking about government regulations and, of course, taxes. I think we will look at taxes under a different administration, and I'm hoping there's an opportunity to look at individual taxes more so than some of the corporate taxes, because it irritates me that some of the corporations headquartered in America but consider themselves global companies don't really have America's best interests at heart, and certainly don't have Americans' best interests at heart. They're welcome and free to do whatever they want to under the bounds of the law in America, but there's no reason that we should be giving them extra special treatment just because they're in America. I mean, we all need to be pulling for our country and for the people that live in our country. And so I know China's a big market, but if you're headquartered in America, I expect you to be helping America out. So, Vicki, I just hope you will contact the office. I thank everybody so much. I guess I got to get off this. I got to get off the call here. Look, I got 750,000 bosses, and I oftentimes don't get a chance to hear from you. So I'm asking you to take a moment and be heard. Call the office, send an email. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question, if you're in the queue or you just didn't want to answer in public, please contact me at 202-225-5836, and we'll get your question answered or help you any way we can. Or you can head to perry.house.gov and click on the Contact Me button there, and I'll make sure that we get your answer. Also, please follow along on the work I do for you at Rep. Scott Perry on all social media platforms. So I thank you for the privilege and the honor of serving you. I wish you all of God's blessings, a safe and happy summer, and I look forward to seeing you at the grocery store, at the gas station, or at a local community event. God bless you. Be well.